Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Dave's Faves number 42. I can't believe we've done this many of them, and there's so many more to come. Today, I want to talk to you about my absolute favorite recording of Dvořák's Symphony number 8. Now, the Eighth is a remarkable piece in a lot of ways. It's kind of a quiet revolution because its entire construction is non-classical. It's based on variations of simple thematic fragments, gorgeous orchestral color, relationships between movements that are very subtle. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a quick example. The two inner movements, the adagio and the quasi-scherzo, it's actually a waltz, they begin with the same tune, transformations of the same tune. And you can trace those transformations back to the beginning of the symphony if that's what you want to do. But it's easiest to hear in these two movements. The slow movement begins da 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 do 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 do. Okay, three phrases in descending order. Forget about how I sang it. That's what it is. It's three phrases going from high to low. Well, so does the next movement. Da 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 da. It's the same idea. It's only transformed and used in different ways. And that's how the whole symphony is constructed, basically. And it's all based on the initial theme that Dvořák presents at the opening of the symphony. It's fascinating, but it's not a motto theme in the way, for example, you hear in Tchaikovsky's Fifth or something like that. It's much more sophisticated than that, and it's much more integrated into the structural fabric of the work. And that makes this piece just amazing to listen to. But it also makes it extremely appealing to conductors who are not always at their happiest playing pieces in traditional classical forms. I mean, you can play it more like a tone poem and it'll work just fine. I mean, that's kind of what we're getting at here, because if you've been following my, Conductor's Best 10 Recordings, the ClassicsToday.com Insider Subscriber Series, and you should all be subscribers, by the way. If you're not, please consider it over at ClassicsToday.com. If you've been following that series, many, many conductors have done some of their best work in this particular symphony. It seems to be a piece which is universally loved and which goes well. It goes well with so many different approaches. It's really kind of remarkable because, musically speaking, it's one of the most personal and unlike anything else kind of pieces Dvořák ever did. What's also interesting about the Eighth is that, Dvořák tended to write pieces in contrasting pairs. You know how, like, Brahms did everything in twos? Like the Third and the Fourth Symphony and the First and the Second Symphony, and then, two overtures and two piano concertos and two this and two that. Well, Dvořák had sort of his own slant on that, but it was a very different musical take on it, because with Dvořák you would get a piece in extremely ethnic Czech personal style, followed by a piece in a more, what you might call, universalist or Germanic or classical style. And so the Seventh Symphony, which is universally regarded as Dvořák's homage to the classical tradition and even to Brahms, is followed by the Eighth, which couldn't possibly be, more different. And, of course, true to its origins, Brahms didn't understand it at all. Brahms listened to it and said, okay, yeah, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's wonderful, the tunes are fabulous, but what is it? He really wasn't able to approach it. And that's really fascinating because it's such a lovable piece of music. And it's the same thing with Dvořák's string quartets. You have the American quartet, and then you have the late quartets, which are influenced by late Beethoven, the last two. Or you have the F minor piano trio, and then the Dumke trio, where you've got these very, very clear efforts on Dvořák's part to demonstrate how he could do both. He could write in the purest of classical traditions and then go off entirely on his own and make his own unique contribution or Czech contribution or whatever you want to call it. It's a fascinating aspect of his work and one that has been very, very little explored because, of course, nobody takes Dvořák seriously, which pisses me off to no end because he deserves to be taken as seriously as Brahms and have just as much serious scholarship devoted to analyzing his music from an intelligent point of view, not just from, oh, he's just a cute little Czech peasant writing nice tunes and, you know how it goes. It's awful. Anyway. So there are a bazillion great recordings of the Eighth Symphony. And my choice, my favorite, my personal favorite, the one I reach for when I feel like listening to the Eighth, as often as not, I mean, there are another dozen that I might reach for, but more often than not is, believe it or not, Herbert von Karajan with the Vienna Philharmonic. Now, this was a piece that was very, very close to Karajan's heart. He recorded it at least 3 times. Maybe 4, maybe more. Well, there's a video too, so, multiple times. He had tremendous feeling for it. He loved it. He played it magnificently. And this first stereo version of the Vienna Philharmonic on Decca, I think is just extraordinary. I think a lot of Karajan's best work happened in that little Decca set, that had the planets and some other things at the Vienna Philharmonic. This also has a very good Brahms third with the Vienna Philharmonic. And the reason is because Karajan never Karajanized the Vienna Philharmonic. He never was able to turn them into, the instrument of his will in the way he was the Berlin Philharmonic. And sometimes his will worked with certain music and sometimes it didn't. But here he has to compromise. He has to let the Vienna Philharmonic be the Vienna Philharmonic and bring his own interpretation to bear. So it's a real collaboration, a real meeting of equals, and the playing is just super gorgeous in all respects, but the interpretation is just exciting. This has probably the best coda to the finale I've ever heard. It's really, really exceptionally wonderful, and you wouldn't expect it because Karajan, of course, did the New World Symphony, and it was and he didn't do much Dvořák generally. Other than that, I mean, he did some little short pieces and whatnot, but he wasn't generally in favor of that kind of music. He was busy doing 450 Brahms cycles, of varying degrees of success. And so I really was not expecting a lot when I first came to this recording, but I just put it on and it's just, wow, it just blew me away. It's just exceptional. He doesn't put a foot wrong anywhere, and you will never hear the work more beautifully played. And it has all that freshness and spontaneity that you never associate with Karajan for the most part, because he's usually very controlling. But no, not here. I think he really understood this piece. He got it. It meant something to him. And he lavished the most careful and devoted attention to it. So this is my choice. And I hope you have a chance to listen to it. And I have to say, I've never been fond of Czech recordings of the Dvořák Eighth. There is a tradition of performance of the Dvořák Eighth in the Czech lands that is particularly deleterious, I think, to realizations of the finale. It tends to sound rather stiff and sluggish in most Czech performances that I've heard. And I've heard most of them, believe me. From Tallich on, I really, really feel that other people do it better in this particular work, which is fascinating because this is like the most Czech of all the Dvořák symphonies. It's very interesting. He's such a much more paradoxical and subtle composer than he gets credit for being. And this is the work that kind of proves it. But anyway, just talking about the Eighth. Karajan, Vienna Phil, Decca, that's my pick. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you for joining me. Take care.